Legislation.
I think I would call people honey because if I felt they were honey. And I might have very well said that to Miss Kennedy, although I never felt that way about her and never believed it.
And one of the most charming.
I just wanted to call you and tell you I loved you, and I didn't have anything to talk to you about except I missed seeing you there on that front row.
Tonight, eavesdropping on a president, the just-released LBJ tapes.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Lyndon Baines Johnson was, at one and the same time, the most single-minded, extroverted, cocksure, insecure, paranoid manipulator of men and women ever to sit in the White House. It is the stuff of rumor, legend, and biography. And now, once again, we have been given access to a new batch of audio tapes of his telephone conversations, which confirm it all beyond a shadow of doubt. He was one complicated man. And we are going to begin tonight with a conversation that you will almost certainly not hear anywhere else. It is, quite frankly, that trivial. But then again, maybe not. Remember all the hoopla not so many months ago about President Clinton getting a haircut at Los Angeles Airport from a high-priced hairdresser to the stars? Would you like to know how Lyndon Johnson might have handled that situation? Well, here's how he did handle a similar one. On December 23rd, 1963, the President of the United States placed a call to Eddie Sens, a hairdresser.
Sens?
Yes, sir.
This is Lyndon Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, yes, sir.
Can I talk to you now without getting in the paper and getting it advertised?
Oh, surely.
Now,
Mr. Johnson, I give you my solemn word as a gentleman.
All right. Now, I'm a poor man. I don't make much money, but I got a wife and a couple of daughters and 4 or 5 people that run around with me, and I like the way you make them look. Now, how much...
and I'm most flattered, I promise you. You can take my word for it that this isn't confidence.
Well, this is your country, and I want to see what you want to do about it. Now, how can you come down here and make them look better?
When do you want me to come?
Well, it depends first on how much it'll cost me.
It won't cost you anything to worry about, sir. I promise you.
All right. I just have to live off of a paycheck, and I'm in debt. But I want to see if you can't come, and I want you to get down here and not give her too much of this makeup, but give her enough to do it. And Lucy, and I've got 2 or 3 friends, and then you'll have to see what we'll have to buy in the way of a dryer or something here, so that when you do come, maybe once every month, why you can do it, and we'll work it out all right.
I am sure of it, sir, and I'm not even concerned about this. But I'm going to try to get a plane out this morning.
You just come right on and then call Ms. Roberts in my office and tell her what time you'll arrive, and I'll have a White House car meet you.
You bet, sir. Ms. Roberts, who should I call?
Ms. Roberts, R-O-B-E-T-R-S, Juanita Roberts, and National 81414.
Just one moment, sir, and I'll get a pencil. I'm sorry, sir. Just 1 second. That's National
81414. And you come as soon as you can.
I'll do that,
and I'll have a $100 bill, and I'll pay you transportation. But I can't pay you like we normally do.
Mr. Johnson, don't even worry about that.
All right, goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye, sir.
Joining me now, as she did the last time that the government released a batch of these tapes, is Doris Kearns Goodwin, the distinguished historian and biographer of LBJ. Now, you and I talked this morning about that exchange, which it blows me away every time I hear it. And somehow you feel that is reflective of Johnson's Kennedy envy. How so?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what it shows is he's saying to him, I'm a poor man. I didn't have any of those advantages the Kennedys had. Just think if I'd had all that orthodontia work, if my wife had had it, if my children had had it, I would have had smiles like the Kennedys. If I'd gone to Harvard, they would have thought I was smart like the Kennedys. It's a real insecurity coming out in this character, but he plays it in such a fabulous way.
It's incredible. I mean, there where he's talking about, let's see what you're going to do for your country here. What he's going to do is the president's wife's hair, you know.
But you'll be a patriot when you do it.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. Toward the end of 1966, William Manchester's book on the Kennedy assassination was about to be published. It was being serialized in Look magazine, but it appears that Johnson had read the manuscript and he hated it. He called Nicholas Katzenbach, who was one of Bobby Kennedy's deputies at the Justice Department, but was now himself Attorney General.
It's just like this Manchester stuff about Kennedy and I having an argument. I never had an argument with him in my life. And incidentally, Nick, that thing is full of 46 mean, vicious errors. Like my forcing him to go to Texas. I never heard of it. Matter of fact, I tried to postpone it toward my popularity is too low, but all that kind of stuff, it's just going to really rock us when it comes out. I want to talk to you about sometime to see if there's anything that we can do to at least moderate their charges. My yelling around that John Connolly had $300 suits. I never did it in my life. He never had one. He buys them off the rack. He's got a good figure. He doesn't have to do like I do. But all of it makes Bobby look like a great hero and makes me look like a son of a bitch, and 95% of it is completely fabricated.
Lyndon Johnson was convinced that JFK's brother Bobby was angling to become president, and that his was the unseen hand behind the bad things that were being written about LBJ. You'll hear that in this next fragment of conversation. Johnson called Abe Fortas, whom he had appointed to the Supreme Court, but who had once been his lawyer and advisor. As far as Johnson was concerned, Justice Fortas was still his old pal.
I believe that Bobby is having his governors jump on me, and he's having his mayors, and he's having his Negroes, and he's having his Catholics, and he's having them just systematically one after the other each day. And he told somebody that he had 10 books coming out in a period of 10 months, and be 10 good ones and 10 bad ones. 10 good ones on Kennedy and 10 bad ones on Johnson.
A few days later, the subject of the Manchester book came up again, this time in a conversation with Bill Moyers, who was then his press secretary. Johnson didn't want to respond to the book publicly. He didn't want his staff responding publicly, despite requests for interviews. He thought it was inappropriate, right in the middle of the Vietnam War, to be correcting things in a book. But it was driving him nuts.
I have a recollection it didn't happen. I think it's a goddamn lie. Now, that's my best judgment, which I'd bet my life on. But I do have a recollection of not ever said a son of a bitchin' word to McHugh. All right. I never said to anybody that I got him told off. I never said to anybody that I called her honey because that was the Texas way. I don't believe that's the Texas way. I think I would call people honey because if I felt they were honey. And I might have very well said that to Miss Kennedy, although I never felt that way about her and never believed it. I have held her kind of up on a pedestal and been very reserved with her, as her letters to me will indicate. Very proper, very appropriate, very dignified, very reserved, as I don't think I called Mrs. Kennedy Sr. honey. I think that is the creature of someone's imagination.
Doris, how could he be so upset about that? Clearly someone spread the word. I guess it was in the Manchester book that he had referred to Jack Kennedy's widow as honey, or had called her honey. It really riled him, didn't it?
Well, you know, he was obsessed with the idea of Bobby. He told me sometimes that he used to wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because he would dream that Bobby was out leading a parade with all the bugles going against Lyndon Johnson. So somehow he thought the Manchester book was not just a book, it was the first stab in the Bobby presidential campaign, because it would say bad things about him, bad things about his feelings about Jackie, and it would somehow make Bobby the president. He could never stop thinking about Bobby Kennedy.
And he could never stop thinking about the Kennedys at all. I mean, in a moment we're going to be looking at some video, not video, we're going to be hearing a conversation that he had about the Kennedy assassination. That too absorbed him for years after the assassination.
Oh, yeah, I remember once he told me he went to Appalachia and there were 2 pictures on the wall of a poor person's home, and he was so excited because he had given poverty program to these poor people. One was Jesus Christ and the other was John Kennedy. He said he felt he'd been slapped in the face. So they never would think of him. They'd only think of that Saint John and Saint Robert.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll listen to that piece of tape I was just talking about. Back in a moment.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by MCI.
Hi, I'm Chris Columbia with MCI. You know, AT&T does commercials that claim our customers only save pennies.
Here's some people that switched to MCI from popular AT&T programs. Pat and Peggy, how much are you saving?
I'm saving 10,700 pennies a year.
14,400 pennies.
20,600 pennies.
I save 10,000 pennies a year with MCI.
36,300 pennies.
63,400 pennies.
I'm saving 73,800 pennies per year.
Gee, I guess AT&T's right. They are just saving pennies.
Every time Mercedes-Benz introduces a new car, other car companies rush to follow. And when Mercedes-Benz introduces a whole class of new cars, others scramble to catch up. So when Mercedes-Benz introduced the E-Class, featuring the powerful E420 V8, other car companies found this one even harder to follow.
I'm David Brinkley. Isn't the world a mess? Bosnia, North Korea, and now Iraq with 26 dead? How far should we be involved in this? Are we about to be over our heads? Sunday.
Friday night at 11, everyone knows the story of this house in Amityville. Now, its terror is reaching a new dimension. As the horror reaches out beyond the edge of your screen.
Everybody get out of the house! Hold on, John. Don't let it get any closer.
Tess Harbor and Tony Roberts, the Demon. Friday night at 11, here on 13.
In Houston, this Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Special Edition costs $6,100 less than the Toyota Camry LE. So Toyota wants you to pay more and still say, I love what you do for me? And at $17,195, that same Cutlass Supreme comes with V6, airbag, anti-lock brakes, automatic, and lots more. So with all those benefits, who really loves you? It's your money.
As you listen to this next conversation, which took place in February of 1967, you need to remember something that Lyndon Johnson did not know. He was calling the acting Attorney General, Ramsey Clark, to talk about a rumor that had been passed on to him. The rumor had it that the CIA and Bobby Kennedy had lined up some mafia people to try and assassinate Fidel Castro after the Bay of Pigs invasion. As you'll hear, Johnson couldn't believe it, didn't believe it. Later, of course, we would learn that it was true.
You know this story going around about the CIA and they're trying to get, sending in the folks to get Castro. To assassinate Castro. Have you got that full story laid out in front of you, know what it is? And has anybody ever told you all the story? No. I think you ought to have that. It's incredible. I don't believe there's a thing in the world to it. I don't think we ought to seriously consider it, but I think you ought to know about it.
Who would I get it from?
I've had it from 3 or 4. I've forgotten who's come in here. I'll have to check.
Does the Bureau have it?
No, I don't think so. You might ask them. Drew Pearson came and gave it to me. He said Morgan told him, Hoffa's lawyer. He says that they have a man that was involved, that was brought in to the CIA with a number of others and instructed by the CIA and the Attorney General to assassinate Castro after the Bay of Pigs.
I've heard that, I've heard that much. I just haven't heard names and places.
Well, let's see who it is. Let's see. I think it would look very bad on us if we'd had it reported to us a number of times and we just didn't pay and just laughed. But anyway, that following this, Castro said they had these pills and they were supposed to take them when they caught them, and they didn't get to take their pills, so he tortured them. And they told him all about it, who was present and why they did it. So he said, okay, we'll just take care of that. So then he called Oswald and a group in and told them about this meeting and go set it up and get the job done.
Pierce was in to see me last week, sat here for 30, 40 minutes, never mentioned anything about it.
Well, he came to see me, and came to see me in the mansion, I'd say a month ago. And there's, before that, 1 or 2 others, but I can't remember who. They were responsible people, but it sounded just like you're telling me that Lady Bird was taking dope. I just wouldn't pay much attention to it. If I'm seeing her every day, I just don't believe it.
Before I talk about that exchange with Doris Kearns, I'd like you to listen once again to something in particular that Johnson said. We'll put the text up on the screen for you.
He tortured them, and they told him all about it, who was present and why they did it. So he said, okay, we'll just take care of that. So then he called Oswald and a group in and told them about this meeting and go set it up and get the job done.
Now, here, Doris, is the President of the United States passing on a rumor that he says was given to him by Drew Pearson, who was a prominent columnist of the day, that Castro had called in Lee Harvey Oswald and a group of others, and the clear implication is that Castro was responsible for the assassination of Jack Kennedy.
I mean, what's really going on below the surface here? Johnson's claiming, I don't like these rumors. I don't believe them. It's just as incredible as Lady Bird taking dope. But on the other hand, he's relishing passing it along. Because what does the rumor say? St. Bobby and the Kennedy CIA, they were out to kill Castro. And then in return, Castro got JFK. So it somehow does everything he wants. He loved rumors. Lady Bird used to say he used too many rumors. She used to put her hand on his knee and say, Lyndon, you shouldn't pass rumors. But this was the perfect one because it discounted Bobby, the person he hated so much.
Actually, you caught me on something, Doris, when we were talking before, because I said all of this later proved, not all of this, but the business about the mafia going down to assassinate Castro and having been sent by the CIA and Bobby, that later proved to be true. Certainly the CIA part proved to be true. I'm not at all sure that that the business about the Attorney General, Bobby Kennedy, having played a role in that has been shown to be true. Do you know?
That's right, but it hasn't been proved to be true at all. But the amazing thing is that later, Lyndon Johnson used to say, now at the beginning he's saying these are all rumors, I don't believe them. Later he'd say, I was never Murder Incorporated like Bobby Kennedy and his friends. He then later made the rumors into facts as if Bobby had actually done it. And he contrasted Bobby being the head of this group, Murder Incorporated, which he would never belong to. So that's what happens. He changes everything around.
We're going to take another break. When we come back, and you'll probably enjoy this, you will see how Lyndon Johnson dealt with the press. Same way. Back in a moment.
Now you can get 50% off all frames at LensCrafters. 50% off every frame we carry.
LensCrafters 50% off all frame sale.
This is a great deal. People should not miss this.
Hurry. LensCrafters offer ends soon.
The Ace Springtacular sale is a smart place to start your spring, because they've got all the stuff you're going to need for all the stuff you got to do this spring. And it's all at the prices you're going to love. The Ace Springtacular sale. Do it now.
Chrysler invites you to lease a leader. Concorde, last year's automobile of the year, now only $269 a month. The highly acclaimed six-passenger New Yorker, only $294. And the car that reinvented sports sedans, Chrysler LHS, is only $329. All with standard dual airbags, anti-lock brakes, and now, exceptional lease offers. Lease a leader, the award-winning cab-forward Chryslers, at your Chrysler Plymouth dealers.
Monday, crime crisis, is a foreign government flooding our streets with deadly weapons. It seems outrageous, but it's perfectly legal. Date One investigates Monday.
The Smothers Brothers for the Black-Eyed Pea.
The Black-Eyed Pea has a great selection of salads. You can't beat their original house salad.
That's one.
And their classic Caesar salad is fantastic.
That's two.
And you've got to try their exciting new Southwest salad.
That's three.
And with every salad, you have your choice of charbroiled chicken, lightly battered chicken, or charbroiled tuna steak.
That makes 9 great choices.
Thank goodness they don't have 11.
America's favorite home-style taste, the Black-Eyed Pea.
They say money will buy more in the new millennium. They say luxury will endure in the new millennium. They even say a car that competes with Lexus and Mercedes can be priced from $26,000 when you're not asked to pay for a luxury division and all that overhead. The new $26,000 Millennium from Mazda.
The sights, the sounds, the tastes. Experience your own Roman holiday as Channel 13 and the Houston International Festival salute Italy. April 20th through May 1st, you'll be treated to Italian music, art, dance, crafts, and food. Plus, meet your favorite Channel 13 personalities at our Italy stage booth. Convenient parking is available, but please leave your coolers, glass containers, and alcoholic beverages at home. For more information, call 713-HIF-0202. The Houston International Festival Salute to Italy is brought to you in part by Channel 13 and these sponsors.
It would be nice to tell you that the only people in Washington immune to LBJ's strong-arming and sweet-talking were my colleagues. But the most distinguished members of the Washington press corps appear to have been just as susceptible to a call from President Johnson as everybody else in town. The most respected columnist of his generation was Walter Lippmann.
Walter? Yes? Lyndon Johnson.
Oh,
How do you do, Mr. President?
Well, I'm doing as good as I could under the circumstances. How you getting along?
Well, I'm getting along. I'm very satisfied with you, but you know it's a tragic business.
Are you at home?
I'm at home.
Could I drop by and bum a drink from you?
What's that?
Could I drop by and bum a drink off of you?
Oh, you certainly could. Come right along.
All right, I'm going to leave here. Give me your address, Walter.
History does not record just what it was that Lyndon Johnson wanted to discuss with Walter Lippmann, but we do have a much fuller conversation that was recorded the next day, December 2nd, 1963. The last time we played some of these recordings for you, I quoted from this conversation between LBJ and the owner of the Washington Post, Katharine Graham. Tonight, we have the tape.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. President.
Hello, my sweetheart. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Are you?
You know, the only one thing I dislike about this job is that I'm married and I can't ever get to see you. I just hear that sweet voice, and it's always on telephone. And I'd like to break out of here and be like one of these young animals down on my ranch, jump a fence.
Now, that's going to set me up for the mud.
In fact, it was Mrs. Graham who wanted something from LBJ. She was inviting the president to speak at a gathering of newspaper publishers in New York.
Who else is speaking? I don't want to get in a debate with Goldwater or Nixon or somebody.
Have anybody else.
I'll think it over, but I think I will. I wouldn't hesitate the slightest if you had Phil here. If you just go up and have him, get him, bring him back where he can sit in and advise with me a while.
Phil Graham, Katharine Graham's late husband, had committed suicide. LBJ was reminding Mrs. Graham how close he had been with her late husband, how Phil Graham had drafted speeches for Johnson.
He'd sit down and write in longhand in 30 minutes what we're going to do, and after talking over and fighting about it and arguing, well, we'd get it. I don't find anybody that's that easy with me anymore.
Eventually, and this was a long conversation, Johnson got around to delivering his own message, his own little request. There had been a lot of stories in the Washington Post about sex scandals involving Senate pages and other stories about a close former aide to Johnson, Bobby Baker.
Now, somebody has got to, instead of just writing the stories about how the pages live, or about Bobby Baker's girl, whether he had a girl or whether he didn't, is not a matter that's going to settle this country. But whether we have justice and equality is pretty damn important. So I'd like for them to be asking these fellas, where did you spend your Thanksgiving holidays? Tell me about it. Was it warm and nice? And write a little story on it.
Johnson, in other words, wanted the Washington Post to focus a little on congressional vacations at a time when the president needed those congresspeople working on legislation here in Washington.
I don't care what you cover in the sex route, but let's cover some of these folks' vacations, and not in a mean way, but just point out that the society people say they spent them out here, and that they surely do hope that they'll take off for Christmas Eve and Christmas if they need to, but that these things haven't been done, and we paid them to do them.
Now that Johnson had what he wanted, he was prepared to commit on that speech request that Mrs. Graham had raised.
Tell him my judgment is I'll do it, and then let's get together in the next week or so.
Bye.
Now, over the past, 30 or 40 years, Doris, I guess every president has realized that in one fashion or another he has to cater to the press or deal with the press, but most of them don't like the press. What about Johnson?
Well, what you're seeing here, it's like an octopus. He's enveloping the press. And it works in the first couple of months. I mean, he is so charming with Kay Graham. He understands she's vulnerable, she's lonely, he's flirtatious. But then he gets from her what he wants. That writing of the stories on the vacations was critical because he had to get the civil rights bill out of the committees on the Hill. And he had to push and push while that moment of time was there when the people felt bad about Kennedy's death, and he had to coalesce it somehow. But meanwhile, what happens is a couple years later when his popularity goes down and the press turns against him, then suddenly this enveloping octopus gets bitten by the very people he loved, and he has no way of understanding it. He's at a shock that they don't love him anymore. What was his attitude, I mean, privately toward the press? It sounds in some of these other little snippets, which we weren't able to play tonight, as though he is, as I guess most presidents are, mildly contemptuous. Well, I think what he thinks at the beginning is that the people in the press are just like politicians. They're just like congressmen. They need to be charmed, wooed, won, seduced. But then when he can't seduce them, he has to have an explanation. And the explanation, once again, Bobby becomes a theme in this whole thing, is that Bobby went out and poisoned the well against him. He couldn't believe he was just unpopular or not liked. That was harder, in a sense, for him. Always that insecurity was there. He wanted so much to be loved. And you can see on these things, he is lovable. That's what's so sad about the whole thing.
Well, I mean, he is outrageous.
Outrageous.
He has absolutely no sense of shame. He'll press any button that he can to get what he wants.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, here's Phil Graham, not long dead, and he's already playing that accordion as if there's nothing embarrassing about bringing it up. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's nothing he would stop at to get what he wanted. That was part of his problem.
You miss him?
I do miss him. I'll tell you, these things make him come alive again, and I don't think we've seen his like in this century, if not in history. And I think anyone who knew him is reminded of what a huge character he was. We love huge characters. At least they keep us going.
Doris Kearns-Goodwin, thanks so much for joining us
Oh,
again.
you're so welcome.
A lot of fun. Thanks. I'll be back in a moment.
Don't you wish you could be this comfortable with all your decisions?
A couple of daughters and 4 or 5 people that run around with me, and I like the way you make them look. Now, how much...
I'm most flattered, I promise you. You can take my word for it that this is incompetence.
Well, this is your country, and I want to see what you want to do about it. Now, how can you come down here and make them look better?
When do you want me to come?
Well, it depends first on how much it'll cost me.
It won't cost you anything to worry about, sir. I promise you.
All right. I just have to live off of a paycheck, and I'm in debt. But I want to see if you can't come and legislation. I think I would call people honey because if I felt they were honey. And I might have very well said that to Miss Kendi, although I never felt that way about her and never believed it.
And one of the most charming.
I just wanted to call you and tell you I loved you, and I didn't have anything to talk to you about except I missed seeing you there on that front row.
Tonight, eavesdropping on a president, the just-released LBJ tapes.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Lyndon Baines Johnson was, at one and the same time, the most single-minded, extroverted, cocksure, insecure, paranoid manipulator of men and women ever to sit in the White House. It is the stuff of rumor, legend, and biography. And now, once again, we have been given access to a new... Know how Lyndon Johnson might have handled that situation? Well, here's how he did handle a similar one. On December 23rd, 1963, the President of the United States placed a call to Eddie Sens, a hairdresser.
Sens?
Yes, sir.
This is Lyndon Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, yes, sir.
Can I talk to you now without getting in the paper and getting it advertised?
Oh, surely.
Now,
Mr. Johnson, I give you my solemn word as a gentleman.
All right. Now, I'm a poor man. I don't make much money, but I got a wife.
A batch of audio tapes of his telephone conversations, which confirm it all beyond a shadow of doubt. He was one complicated man. And we are going to begin tonight with a conversation that you will almost certainly not hear anywhere else. It is, quite frankly, that trivial. But then again, maybe not. Remember all the hoopla not so many months ago about President Clinton getting a haircut at Los Angeles airport from a high-priced hairdresser to the stars? Would you like to know?